Be me 32, HR manager at this company. Observed a pattern where exceptional female employees were consistently bypassed in favor of underqualified men. Now I have the power to level the playing field. Every day I walk into that office knowing I'm fighting the good fight. Men think they can just waltz around here acting like they own the place. Not on my watch. Been working here 3 years, already made significant improvements to our workplace culture. Implemented mandatory bias training, updated harassment policies, created safe spaces for reporting. Some people call it aggressive, but that's just because they're uncomfortable with progress. Today starts like any other day, reviewing employee files when Jessica from accounting stops by. Hey Amanda, can I talk to you about something? Jessica's this sweet 24-year-old, fresh out of college, still naive about how the world really works. Perfect example of how women get taken advantage of in these environments. Of course, come in. What's going on? She sits down, looking uncomfortable, fidgeting with her hands. It's probably nothing, but I've been feeling weird about some interactions with David from the marketing team. David, 29, one of those typical tech bros who thinks he's God's gift to women. Married with 2 kids, but I've seen how he looks at the younger female employees. Classic predator behavior that I've been waiting for someone to report. Tell me everything, Jessica. You're safe here. Well, he's been friendly, I guess. Like yesterday, he complimented my dress and said it looked nice on me. Already my alarm bells are going off. Textbook, workplace harassment disguised as innocent compliments. What else? I need you to really think about this, because these patterns escalate. He's asked me about weekend plans a few times, and he offered to help me with the quarterly report when I was struggling. Manipulation Tactics 101. Offering help to establish power, dynamics and create opportunities for isolation. Jessica, I need you to understand something. These aren't innocent interactions. This is how workplace harassment begins. Really? I mean, he seemed like he was just being nice. This poor girl has been so conditioned by patriarchal structures that she can't even recognize predatory behavior. That's exactly what they want you to think. Trust me, I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. Spend the next hour explaining to her how David's behavior fits classic harassment patterns. Show her statistics about workplace assault. Explain how predators groom their victims. By the end of our conversation, she's starting to see the truth. I never thought about it that way before. Maybe there were other incidents too that I dismissed. Exactly. Your mind is protecting you by minimizing these experiences, but we need to document everything. Over the next few weeks, I work closely with Jessica, help her remember all the interactions she had with David. Amazing how many red flags emerge when you know what to look for. The way he smiled at her during meetings, how he positioned himself near her workstation, the time he touched her shoulder while explaining a project. Classic escalation pattern that would have led somewhere much worse if we hadn't intervened. I think he might have cornered me in the supply room last month, she tells me during one of our sessions. Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail matters. He came in right after me and stood really close. Said something about how I always smell nice. Textbook intimidation tactic, using physical proximity to establish dominance. Did anyone see this happen? No. That's what made it so uncomfortable. Like he planned it that way. Of course he did. They always do. Predators are calculated in their approach. Help Jessica write up a formal complaint detailing the pattern of harassment. Coach her on how to present her case to make sure she's believed. Remember, your feelings matter. If you felt uncomfortable, that's harassment, regardless of his intent. Jessica files the complaint, and I immediately launch a full investigation. Interview David within hours of receiving the complaint. He looks shocked, claims everything was innocent workplace interaction. Typical gaslighting response. David, we have detailed testimony about inappropriate comments, unwanted physical contact, and predatory behavior. Amanda, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just being friendly. Friendly? Is that what you call cornering a young woman in a supply room? His face goes pale, knows he's caught. I don't remember anything like that happening. Maybe she misinterpreted. So now you're calling her a liar. This is exactly the kind of response we'd expect from someone trying to cover up their behavior. Suspend him immediately pending investigation. Company policy is clear about harassment allegations. Zero tolerance means zero tolerance. Word spreads quickly through the office. Some people express shock, but that's typical when predators are exposed. They're often the most charming on the surface. David's wife calls the office crying, begging to speak with me. Please, there has to be some mistake. David would never do anything like this. Classic enabler behavior. Wives often refuse to see what's right in front of them. Ma'am, I understand this is difficult, but we have to take these allegations seriously. But you don't understand. David talks about work all the time. He's mentioned Jessica before as someone he was trying to help. Exactly. Predators often target vulnerable women under the guise of helping them. Complete my investigation within 2 weeks. Present, comprehensive findings to management. Clear pattern of harassment with escalating behavior. Recommendation for immediate termination and potential criminal referral. CEO supports my findings completely. Amanda, thank you for handling this so professionally. We can't have people like that in our workplace. David gets fired that afternoon. Security escorts him out while he maintains his innocence. Pathetic watching him try to salvage his reputation as everyone watches. A few weeks later, hear through the grapevine that his wife filed for divorce. Apparently, she couldn't handle being married to a predator. Also heard he's struggling to find new employment. Background checks reveal the harassment allegation. Good. Actions have consequences. Jessica seems relieved, but still traumatized by the whole experience. I'm so glad you helped me see what was really happening. I could have been his next victim. Exactly the kind of impact I hope to have in this role. Protecting vulnerable women from workplace predators. Few months pass, everything seems to have settled down. Then one day, get a call from the police. Ms. Amanda, we need to speak with you about the harassment investigation involving David. Probably want additional documentation for their criminal case. Meet with Detective Rodriguez the next day. We've been conducting our own investigation into the allegations against David. Of course, I'm happy to provide any additional information you need. Actually, we need to ask you about some inconsistencies we've discovered. Inconsistencies? My investigation was thorough and professional. What kind of inconsistencies? Well, we've reviewed security footage from your office building. The supply room incident Jessica described, David was in meetings all day. The timestamps don't match. Security footage can be unreliable. Timestamps get mixed up all the time. There might be technical issues with the footage. Jessica was very clear about what happened. We also spoke with David's colleagues. Multiple people confirm he was never alone with Jessica during the time frames she specified. Colleagues covering for each other is standard practice. Boys' club mentality runs deep in corporate environments. Detective, you have to understand the culture we're dealing with here. Men protect other men. Ma'am, we've also discovered some concerning communications between you and Jessica. My heart starts racing. What communications? I'm not sure what you mean. Detective pulls out printed emails. Emails I sent Jessica with advice on how to present her case. These messages show you coaching her on specific details to include in her testimony. That's not coaching. That's helping a trauma victim remember suppressed experiences. I was providing support to someone who had been victimized. That's literally my job. This email here suggests she initially said nothing inappropriate happened. You responded that she needed to dig deeper and trust her instincts about feeling unsafe. Helping someone recognize gaslighting isn't manipulation, it's therapy. Detective, workplace harassment victims often minimize their experiences initially. It's a known psychological response. We need you to come to the station for a formal interview. This is insane. They're investigating me instead of the actual predator. Typical police response to workplace harassment cases. Always blame the women who speak up. Call my lawyer immediately. She advises cooperation, but warns me this seems serious. Amanda, these allegations suggest you may have coached false testimony. That's a felony. False testimony? Jessica was harassed. I helped her recognize it. This is a witch hunt. They're trying to discredit legitimate harassment claims. Formal interview at police station is a nightmare. They grill me for hours about my conversations with Jessica, twist everything I said into some kind of conspiracy. You sent 14 emails coaching her story. You suggested specific details she should remember. I was helping her process trauma. Ms. Amanda, Jessica has recanted her testimony. She admits nothing inappropriate ever happened with David. World. Stop spinning. Jessica recanted? Impossible. She was clearly traumatized by David's behavior. She's obviously been intimidated into changing her story. Actually, she came forward voluntarily, said she felt pressured by you to make false allegations. False allegations? There's nothing false about recognizing harassment patterns. Jessica just got scared and buckled under pressure. Few days later, get called into emergency meeting with CEO. His whole demeanor has changed. Amanda, we've received some very disturbing information about the David investigation. Sir, If this is about Jessica's recantation, she's clearly been pressured. We've conducted our own internal review. It recovered deleted emails from your account. Deleted emails? I never deleted anything. Emails where you specifically told Jessica to claim David touched her inappropriately, even after she said he never did. That's not what those emails said. I was helping her understand that unwanted. Touching doesn't have to be sexual to be harassment. You also researched David's schedule to help Jessica place him in locations where no witnesses would be present. I researched his schedule to understand the pattern of when he would approach vulnerable women. Amanda, David never harassed Jessica. Our investigation shows you manufactured this entire situation. Manufactured? I protected a vulnerable woman from a predator. Sir, with respect, workplace harassment is often subtle. Just because there's no smoking gun doesn't mean... David was never alone with Jessica. Security footage confirms this. His whereabouts are accounted for during every incident she described. Security footage can be edited. This is a cover-up. Jessica has admitted she made everything up because you convinced her David was dangerous. Made everything up? She experienced harassment. I helped her recognize it. Amanda, you're terminated immediately. We're also referring this matter to law, enforcement, and the state licensing board. Terminated? For protecting women in the workplace? This is exactly why harassment continues to happen. System protects predators and punishes those who speak up. Pack up my office under security supervision. Humiliating having colleagues watch me get escorted out. Same colleagues I've worked to protect from hostile work environment. News of my termination spreads quickly through professional networks. Receive calls from friends in HR asking what happened. Amanda, people are saying you fabricated harassment claims. That can't be true. Try to explain the situation, but everyone seems already convinced. Maybe you got too zealous about workplace protection. Too zealous? There's no such thing when it comes to protecting women. Few weeks later, criminal charges are filed. Conspiracy to file false police report. Witness tampering. Criminal defamation. Each charge carries potential prison time. Hire the best criminal defense attorney I can afford. She reviews the case and her assessment is grim. Amanda, the evidence is overwhelming. They have emails, testimony, security footage. Everything contradicts Jessica's original claims. But she was genuinely uncomfortable around David. I helped her understand that discomfort meant something. You coached her to make specific false allegations. That's criminal behavior. False allegations. Workplace harassment is often subtle and psychological. Just because it doesn't fit legal definitions doesn't mean it didn't happen. Meanwhile, David has hired a civil attorney. He's suing me personally for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress, claims I destroyed his life and career with manufactured allegations. His lawsuit describes losing his job, his marriage, custody of his children, claims he's unemployable in his field due to harassment allegations, seeking damages in excess of $2 million. My legal bills are mounting rapidly. Criminal defense. Costs $50,000 just for pre-trial preparation. Civil defense will cost even more. Forced to cash out my retirement savings and sell my condo. Friends who supported me initially start distancing themselves. Amanda, I believe you had good intentions, but maybe you went too far this time. Went too far protecting women from predators. This is exactly why harassment continues unchecked. People are more worried about false accusations than actual victims. State Licensing Board opens formal investigation into my HR credentials. 20 years of professional development at risk. My entire career could be over. Receive letter informing me of hearing to determine if my certifications should be revoked. Charges include professional misconduct and abuse of position. If they revoke my credentials, I'll never work in HR again. Attend the hearing with my attorney. Board members review the evidence against me. Emails showing me coaching Jessica's testimony. Security footage disproving her allegations. Jessica's testimony admitting she made everything up. Ms. Amanda, your actions represent the most serious breach of HR ethics we've ever encountered. Breach of ethics? I protected a vulnerable employee. You manipulated a young woman into making false accusations that destroyed an innocent man's life. Innocent man? David was a predator who hadn't been caught yet. Just because his behavior was subtle doesn't mean he was innocent. Your behavior has damaged the credibility of legitimate harassment claims everywhere. Legitimate harassment claims? Jessica's claim was legitimate. She felt unsafe around David. That's enough. Board votes unanimously to permanently revoke all my professional certifications. 20 years of career development gone instantly. Also banned from ever applying for HR credentials in the future. Effectively blacklisted from my profession for life. Criminal trial begins 6 months after charges are filed. Prosecutor presents devastating case against me. Timeline of emails showing how I gradually convinced Jessica to make false claims. Security footage proving David was never alone with her. Jessica's testimony describing how I manipulated her into lying. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant didn't just encourage false allegations, she manufactured them completely. Manufactured allegations? I helped Jessica recognize harassment she was minimizing. My defense attorney tries to argue I genuinely believed Jessica was being harassed. My client was overzealous in her efforts to protect workplace safety, but she never intended to create false allegations. Prosecutor destroys this defense with email evidence. The defendant researched David's schedule specifically to place him alone with Jessica during times when no witnesses would be present. I was documenting patterns of predatory behavior. That's how harassment investigations work. She told Jessica to claim physical touching occurred when Jessica explicitly said it never did. I was helping her understand that harassment doesn't require physical contact. Psychological intimidation is just as harmful. Jury deliberates for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 18 months in prison with possibility of parole after 12 months. Also ordered to pay restitution for David's legal fees and lost wages. Additional $400,000 on top of the civil lawsuit. Damages. Total financial liability approaches $3 million. Bankruptcy is inevitable. Lose my condo in foreclosure while serving my sentence. All my possessions sold to partially satisfy judgment creditors. Family stops visiting after first few weeks in prison. Amanda, we love you, but what you did was wrong. That man's life was destroyed. Destroyed? His life was interrupted temporarily. Women's lives are destroyed by harassment every day, and nobody cares. Few friends continue writing letters initially, but even their support fades as reality sets in. I want to believe you had good intentions, but the evidence is pretty clear you went too far. Went too far protecting women? This is why predators continue getting away with their behavior. Society protects men over women every time. Served 13 months before getting parole. Emerged from prison to find my entire life has collapsed. No home, no savings, no career, no friends. Credit destroyed by bankruptcy and unpaid judgments. Criminal record makes finding any employment nearly impossible. Apply for dozens of jobs, but background checks eliminate me immediately. Sorry, we can't hire someone with felony convictions for dishonesty. Dishonesty? I protected a vulnerable woman from a predator. Society punishes women who speak up against male power structures. Forced to take minimum wage job at retail store. Manager makes it clear I'm lucky they hired me. Usually we don't hire people with your kind of background. My kind of background? Former HR professional. Who protected workplace safety? Rent tiny studio apartment in worst part of town. Only place that would accept someone with my credit history. No friends, no social life, no professional network. Complete social isolation. Occasionally see former colleagues around town. They pretend not to recognize me. Professional community wants nothing to do with someone who fabricated harassment claims. Fabricated claims? I helped someone recognize subtle harassment patterns. David filed successful civil suit while I was in prison. Judgment for $2.1 million plus attorney fees. Means I'll never recover financially. Wages garnished for the rest of my working life. See news article about David 18 months after my release. He's rebuilt his career at new company. Remarried and seems to have moved on completely. Article mentions he's become an advocate for men falsely accused of harassment. Speaks at conferences about the damage false allegations can cause. False allegations? Jessica was genuinely uncomfortable around him. That discomfort was valid regardless of what anyone else thinks. But nobody wants to hear that narrative anymore. Easy to blame me, then examine systemic issues that create hostile workplaces. 5 years later, still working retail minimum wage. Still living in same studio apartment, still completely isolated from professional and social communities. Occasionally see LinkedIn posts from former colleagues advancing their careers, HR directors getting promoted, speaking at conferences, making real change. Change I should have been part of if the system hadn't failed me. David has become successful consultant helping companies handle harassment allegations. Ironic that someone who should have been investigated is now the expert. But that's how patriarchal systems work. They protect their own and punish women who challenge them. Jessica moved across the country after everything happened, heard through mutual acquaintances that she's working in completely different field, probably traumatized by how her attempt to report harassment was twisted against her. Another woman silenced by the system. Sometimes wonder if I should have handled things differently, maybe been more subtle in helping Jessica recognize the harassment. But subtle approaches don't work against predators. They're too skilled at hiding their behavior. Systemic problems require systematic responses. Unfortunately, society isn't ready for the level of change necessary to truly protect women. Easier to blame individual advocates than address root causes. My life is effectively over. No career prospects, no financial recovery possible, no social connections. Complete isolation and poverty, but I still believe I did the right thing. Helped a vulnerable woman recognize harassment she was experiencing. That David's behavior didn't meet legal standards doesn't mean it was appropriate. Workplace harassment is often subtle and psychological. Just because courts don't recognize it doesn't mean it's not real. Unfortunately, speaking up against male power structures always comes with consequences. Women who challenge the system get destroyed. Tale as old as time. At least I tried to make a difference. Spent my career protecting vulnerable employees. Even if society punished me for it, I know my intentions were right. Someday maybe people will understand that workplace harassment exists on a spectrum. Not everything inappropriate rises to criminal level, but that doesn't make it acceptable. Until then, women like Jessica will continue suffering in silence. Afraid to speak up because they've seen what happens to those who do. System protects predators and destroys advocates. My life is proof of that. But I regret nothing, except maybe not being more careful about documentation. Next time, I'll be smarter about protecting evidence, though there probably won't be a next time. Career is over, life is over. But at least I tried to fight the good fight. That has to count for something.